Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. As you know, a deal has been reached over the infrastructure plan. Now, this is a win for roads, for bridges, but there are no tax hikes, which is exactly what the Democrats wanted. What are the key takeaways as far as the infrastructure deal is concerned? Let's take a look at this article on your screen from Bloomberg. And as always, we'll provide you with the link to this article and all of our resources in the description section below. And you'll see the headline reads, "A win for roads and no tax hikes, infrastructure deal takeaways." Now, the road work, improving our roads, gets a lion's share of the proposed $579 billion plan. Now, climate spending falls short of what many environmentalists wanted. So, what are the key takeaways from this infrastructure proposal? Let's take a closer look. The first key takeaway is that traditional infrastructure is a big winner. Roads and bridges were big winners in the package, which was consistent with the Republican insistence on, I quote, traditional infrastructure. Now, that roadwork, along with other major projects, accounts for $109 billion out of the $579 billion in spending. Now, other projects, other brick and mortar projects were also represented. $49 billion for a public transit system or improvements in public transit, $66 billion for Amtrak as well as commuter and freight railways, $25 billion for airports, and $55 billion for water infrastructure. Here's a quote from Greg Reagan, who's the president of the AFL-CIO's Transportation Trades Department. This is what Greg said in a statement. "The proposed infrastructure deal looks like a significant step forward in meeting the long neglected needs of our nation's infrastructure and the working families who rely on it." So let's take a look at this image on your screen that was published in the Bloomberg article, which is a White House fact sheet. These are the key parts of the infrastructure deal between the White House and the bipartisan group of senators. Roads, bridges, and major projects get $109 billion. Public transit, $49 billion. Passenger and freight rail, $66 billion. Electric vehicle infrastructure, $7.5 billion. Electric buses and transit, $7.5 billion. Airports, $25 billion. Water infrastructure, $55 billion. Broadband infrastructure, $65 billion. Environmental remediation, this is something the Democrats wanted, specifically the liberals, but there's nearly not enough money as far as they're concerned. Environmental remediation, $21 billion. Power infrastructure, including grid authorities, $73 billion, and miscellaneous, $101 billion. Another key takeaway is that the plan is light on climate spending, but more may be coming. Now, the bipartisan deal does not include a lot of money for climate spending, but the proponents, the liberals, may get a second chance through the reconciliation procedure that Democratic congressional leaders have said that they're going to go forward with. Now, the framework that was just announced that I did cover on our channel does not include a mandate that was sought by the White House that would have required utility companies to produce power only from carbon-free sources. So that is something the White House did not get. There's another thing the White House did not get. The White House wanted $174 billion for electric vehicle initiatives, a 10-year extension of the tax credits for wind, solar, and other renewable sources. And there were other measures that President Biden had said were necessary to stimulate investments in a clean energy economy and encourage low-emission technology. Now, he wanted to do this because global warming is a big priority for the Democrats, and this is something that the president had announced when he was pushing the American Rescue Plan. Now, this deal does include, like I mentioned earlier, $7.5 billion in funding for electric vehicle charging stations, but the president and the Democrats wanted much more. This is what Pete Maysmith, a senior vice president with the League of Conservation Voters, said in an interview to Bloomberg. He said this: "It's essential that bold climate action happens through budget reconciliation. It's vital." Now, there is another key takeaway, folks. Some of the tougher elements need to be worked out in the reconciliation package. President Biden made it clear that his support for the physical infrastructure package was contingent on Congress also passing companion legislation. In other words, he said, hey, I'll support this if there's also a reconciliation package for other priorities in the American Jobs Plan, in the American Families Plan. In other words, President Biden wants support for human infrastructure in addition to physical infrastructure, and he will only then sign this into law. Those proposals include $400 billion for care for older people and families with disabilities. $225 billion to help low-income families pay for childcare. $225 billion National Paid Family and Medical Leave Program. Free universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, as well as free tuition for community college and expansions or extensions of various tax credits for families and low-income individuals. Now, a lot of people want more to be done. Here's a quote from Michael Brune, who's the executive director of the Sierra Club. There can be no bipartisan agreement signed into law without a companion reconciliation package rooted in the climate, jobs, and justice vision of the American Jobs and American Families Plan. So as you can see, folks, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Now, here's another key takeaway. President Biden got 2/3 for some things. So President Biden said the infrastructure deal got 2/3 of the resources that I proposed in my American Jobs Plan for the following areas: clean transportation, clean water, universal broadband, clean power infrastructure, environmental resilience. Now, for rail service, President Biden said that the $66 billion in the framework compares with the $90 billion that he had asked for. Electric buses got $7.5 billion of the $15 billion he had asked for, with similar numbers for electric charging infrastructure. President Biden also highlighted $49 billion for public transit. Now, the administration's original proposal was over an 8-year period, but the bipartisan deal is over 5 years. This means it's going to be hard to compare the two proposals. Now, President Biden did get most of what he wanted on broadband, with the deal proposing $65 billion compared with $100 billion he had needed. So also the president has been seeking $100 billion in spending on the nation's electric transmission systems. So the $73 billion that was pledged is slightly less than 3/4 of what he wanted. Now, the White House did say that the legislation would finance the largest investment in public transit in American history, and it would result in the elimination of lead service lines in the nation's water systems. The biggest takeaway, if you will, the final takeaway, no tax increases, although it remains to be seen how we are going to pay for this. Now, this agreement lists a hodgepodge of sources for funding the infrastructure spending. Now, it is not going to directly raise taxes, which is something that was a red line for Republicans. A lot of the money is going to be repurposed from unspent stimulus relief that was allocated up until this point. There's going to be investments in the Internal Revenue Service so they can collect more money, and also selling oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, the plan avoids an increase in the 18.4 cents per gallon federal gas tax that infrastructure supporters have sought to provide a funding source for long-range construction projects. What is the bottom line? President Biden's proposals to raise taxes on corporations and high-earning Americans are still on the table. However, the administration is counting on most of its tax proposals ending up in the reconciliation package, and that is a way that President Biden and the Democrats might be able to get funding for the trillions of dollars in the spending that is about to take place. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.